Well, today on the Music Money Podcast, I am so excited to talk to Nicholas Roberts. Nicholas is an indie pop artist based in Orlando, Florida. After leaving his corporate job in 2017, Roberts began writing and releasing a new song every month. And so to date, he's amassed more than 7 million streams on Spotify and Apple Music and had over 60 placements of his songs in TV shows on Netflix, ABC, MTV, and more. You can follow him on social media at Nicholas Roberts Music. Today, we're going to go over how Nicholas has been able to, how he's been able to get so many streams on Spotify and Apple Music, how he's gotten so many sync licensing deals, both as an artist as well as writing custom jingles and pitches, how he's been able to get his music licensed for use on podcasts, which I think is very interesting. We'll talk about how he's gotten paid to do demos and vocal top lines for other artists, and how he's gotten royalties from songs where he was signed to an indie label. So now you can see why I'm so excited to dive in. Lots of music money making concepts to share here on the Music Money Podcast. Nicholas, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. All right. This is cool, man. So a little backstory here. So Nicholas and I just actually met in a Reddit music marketing group.
Power of the internet.
Yeah, I know, right? It's really cool. And then, but then, so I was saying, I'm sure I was saying some really controversial things on Reddit. That it was not. I actually have had the Reddit police come in and go, "Hey, man, you need to tone it back."
Yeah, turn it down wherever you're at. You bring it down a little bit.
It happened once. I'm like, okay, cool. Actually, I think I said something that apparently was overtly promotional. I'm like, really? Okay, but.
They're funny. It's Reddit is such it's whatever the 5th or 6th most visited site in the world, but it still feels like this underground community that nobody ever talks about in public.
Well, and I probably, and I mean, with all that debacle or whatever you want to call with the GameStop stock craziness that went on and Reddit, that was huge PR for them, and so I kind of got on that bandwagon because I had heard about Reddit, but I just didn't. But that definitely drove my curiosity. Is like, what is this platform all about? And I actually dig it quite a bit.
So a lot of cool people meeting people on the internet.
Yeah, no question. So, but the craziest thing is I really like some of the things that you had said. You had chimed in on a post and actually said how you had been so successful on Spotify and all these sync licensing deals. And I invited you to come on the podcast. And then I found out that you're born and raised in Sarasota. Is that right?
Not born and raised, but mostly raised. My parents ended up moving there when I was a kid, kind of threw a dart at a map and said, we got to get the hell out of wherever we are right now. And sunny southern Florida sounded nice. So that's where we ended up.
That's so similar to my story. It's kind of crazy. So for those of you who don't realize, I live in Sarasota, Florida, actually right outside it. And I moved here from Southern Indiana. So your parents' story is similar to mine.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any relations down here, but we were like, wow, this is a great place to visit. So let's just live there.
When you're freezing your butt off in the winter and you're staring out at the snow, it seems appealing. Like, let's pack the car and go.
Yeah. I mean, the gray sky, that's the thing that always got to us in the Midwest is it's like gray skies in the winter, maybe not snowing or whatever, for like 5 months on end, and it can be a little depressing. But okay, back to the topic at hand. Let's get back into some music. So Spotify and Apple Music, I'm sure that's definitely talking about Reddit and pretty much any other marketing forum, Facebook groups and all that. Spotify is about 90% of what people talk about. So let's just dive into that first.
Sure.
I'm sure that's what people are really wondering about. So let's recap a little bit. So how many streams have you had?
I think on Spotify, probably somewhere close to 7 million.
Wow.
Yeah, 6.5, 7.5, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. So now you said you left your corporate job in 2017. Did that lead? Because the way I read it, it kind of was feeling like one led to the other.
Yeah, it was a little bit of happenstance and a little bit of just my life got shaken up. I had a job. I was just working like a 9-to-5 job, and the company that I worked for ended up getting acquired by a bigger company. And when that happened, they ended up just laying a whole bunch of people off, myself included. And I was sitting on a little bit of music. I think I had maybe one song done at the time. And I just kind of said, screw it. I'm going to start releasing consistently. I kept talking about it, and I had never really done it. So I just decided, I think I got let go maybe in June 2017, July, somewhere around there. And then the next month I said, yeah, I'm just going to start putting out music. And I committed myself to doing a new song a month. It's like, if I can't finish 3 minutes of music in a month, in a whole 30 days, I should probably try and do something else. So I kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and started figuring it out.
I love that because I'm feeling almost like a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Convicted. If you were feel like a religious guy, if you can't finish 3 minutes of music a month,
Mm-hmm.
then you should probably do something else. And I think about how I think it's such a big deal sometimes to write songs, and that's actually does put it into perspective. But just to
Yeah,
back
for
up a little
sure.
bit, I want to put a pin in that thought. But what were you doing in your corporate gig, if you don't mind me asking?
I was doing marketing at a tech company. Vaguely, I had gone to school for. I bounced around every single major that there was, and I ended up with a business degree because they said you have to finish. You got to pick something and
Yeah.
finish. So I ended up doing business, and moved to Nashville. And when I was in a band up in Nashville, I kind of had I got a little experience doing booking for like some local artists, and then I got some experience helping other artists do like PR and marketing and stuff. And
Okay.
I was able to segue that into doing marketing for a tech company here in Orlando.
Okay. So, how did you end up in Orlando? Did you just bolted from Nashville?
Yeah, long story short, I moved to Nashville with a band, did the band thing up there for a couple of years, didn't work out, bands break up, and I was just flat broke. I was
Mm,
like living out of my van and stuff, and I was like, I'm just gonna go back to Florida. My girlfriend lived in Orlando, so I moved back to Orlando to figure it out. I've been here for a little while now, before moving to LA in a couple weeks. So
I can't, I can't help but think it's like, musicians and girlfriends. God
yeah,
love them.
my now wife, I can a success story. It ended up being a great decision.
Yeah, for sure. Because like when I was, um, much, I'm probably much older than you, but my wife and I married really early. I was 21, she was 20, and we
Yeah,
dated all through high school. But we both dropped out of college and decided, it was all my dream to move to Dallas, and some just because we had a connection there. And then, the whole band ended up moving to LA. But, I would not have been able to do any of that stuff without her, because basically we're like, yes, we're married, but we're roommates too,
yeah,
and helping, so having somebody help with the rent and all that. I mean, and God love her, she's put up with so much, and she still puts up with it. I'm still gigging every weekend. I'm never home on Friday or Saturday night. So, you
it's
know,
hard to. It's I think you got to find a partner that works with you on that sort of thing.
no
I think
question.
that's super important. Like if you're trying to make music happen and you're in a relationship and stuff, you got to be supportive of each other. So I think like an underlying part of the practicality of it is just have somebody that you can lean on and can help you grow on your
Yeah,
own
no
on
question.
yourself and what you're making.
So okay. So I said I was going to put a pin in that. So 2017, you literally had one song, like,
And not ever. I had finished. I When I moved back from Nashville to Orlando, I bought one of those like recording kits, Guitar Center, whatever little recording interface, and I think I had an SM57, and I had recorded an album, a full length album, just on that. I would like sit in coffee shops, and I just made an album, the best that I could, and
mm-hmm,
so that was at the time was the only thing I had put out, and so there was kind of a gap between this album and then I knew that I wanted to start recording again. And I just dove in. I was like, let me just record one song. I had some friends at a local studio help me out, and I recorded one song. But then when I lost my job, yeah, I didn't have anything. I had
okay,
like GarageBand on my computer, and I was like, well, I've kind of backed myself into a corner, so I guess I got to figure it out.
yeah, yeah, okay, well, cool. Well, GarageBand, I think, has launched a lot of careers. I mean,
Hmm.
if it weren't for GarageBand, I wouldn't be able to create any demos
Yeah,
because
it's great.
yeah, I have guys in my band that are like super into, higher end software platforms and know how to use all that stuff. I'm kind of like, all right, I'm a band leader and a songwriter of an 8-piece band, and that's enough. I'm kind of like, I kind of draw the line, and like I
Hmm.
don't want to learn how to engineer and do all that stuff. Let other people do that. But um, okay, so then you decided to write and release one song per month, and that's,
Yeah.
I know that's been a thing. That's what everybody's kind of saying. That's what you needed to do. It's obviously it's worked for you. What do you think that's about? How does that?
I think that at the time, I think a couple people said that I was kind of crazy, uh, which sounds silly now because of the prevalence of it. But
Mhm.
at the time, I only knew of a couple artists that had taken that on, and I heard it and I thought it was a good idea. Um, I think
Plus, you didn't have much choice. You only had one song, right? So
right, yeah,
you know,
by default,
right.
I either go write a whole record and do the thing again, or yeah, do the singles thing. I I didn't realize the value of it. It was just pure utility. I was like, well, I only have one, so I guess we're doing one. But in retrospect, I think the the frequency of releases, at least on platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, they tend to reward frequency of uploads because it's difficult for them to feature albums. Like Spotify make part of their business model is making playlists and stuff, and they're not just going to put the whole new album in there. So I feel like you're seeing more and more artists figure out I just got to keep putting singles out, almost like they did back in the 60s, leading up to a compilation, leading up to an EP or an album or something later. It doesn't have to be everything you put out doesn't have to be this one big project. So I think they started rewarding that type of behavior.
Okay, so you've actually seen that. Do you attribute a lot of your success to that? Just like, that the playlists are more apt to pick you up, you think, because
Mm.
you kind of play by those rules?
Yeah, so I think on Spotify specifically, there's two playlists called Release Radar and Discover Weekly, and they're both algorithmically generated. So they share new music with people that are either have listened to you in the past or are would probably like your stuff. So Spotify curates those playlists. By releasing frequently, it gets number one, it's just more shots at the net in those playlists. But
Mm.
Spotify wants to keep you engaged with the platform. It's in their interest to continue showing new music. So like putting stuff out on a regular basis gives them more opportunities to continually have new content for their listeners. Uh, yeah, if you're a band that's been away for like 10 years and you come out and you put out a brand new album, Spotify doesn't know who listens to you, so it doesn't know
Mm.
who to show it to. But if you're always giving it new stuff, it starts to kind of build the audience yourself. So that's definitely something I've noticed, seeing streaming numbers in those playlists just build and build and build over time just through frequent release.
Excellent. So, kind of, if you would just explain the process. So, maybe even to go so far back up to, I mean, like, how many instruments do you play? Do you play everything on the record, or you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say on every song of mine, but I'm dangerous enough, I think, at everything. Guitar, I grew up playing guitar primarily, but over time I figured out how to play piano and program drums and stuff. I Lately I work with other artists or invite other producers in and stuff. But I would say I produce 80% of what happens in a finished song
Okay.
these
Okay.
days.
So do you engineer it yourself, or do you just kind of hand that over to somebody as far as, like, mixing and adding effects and that kind of stuff?
I do. I have a mixing and mastering engineer, a good friend of mine that I trust with everything that I finish. So I'm usually writing the demo on guitar or on piano or something, bringing it in, producing it on the computer. I said the reason I said 80% of the time, if 80% of the time, because I produce 100% of some of the songs, and then sometimes I'm just featuring on it. So if I'm the one importing the demo onto the computer, there's a 99% chance that I'm going to be the one producing the whole thing, kind of printing down effects, producing, arranging it, and then just sending it to mix. So I'm self-contained, recording everything here at home. Uh, yeah, making everything start to finish except for the final mix and master.
Okay, cool. And do you actually do that on GarageBand, or do you kind of?
No, I'm in Logic, Logic Pro. I used to be on Cubase when I did my first record. That was like my SM57, and I was in Cubase then, and then made the jump in 2017 when I lost my job. I was just tired of having to pay to go to the studio. Honestly, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm here all the time. I should probably just figure this out. And that was kind of the start of that journey.
Okay, and then Logic is kind of like a step up from GarageBand. It's almost like a because
Mm-hmm.
it's the same platform, right?
Yeah, it's like GarageBand Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how just not I don't want to spend too much time on the engineering piece, but how was the transition for you? Did you find it challenging?
Um, I don't. For me, no, I don't think it was challenging, but I do think I had an understanding of the recording process. I feel like enough up to that point. I'd been in enough studios in Nashville with my band. I had been in up playing in other people's projects. Like I felt I had a comfortability just around Pro Tools and around the studio in general. That
Okay.
when I sat down to start working on my own stuff, I didn't know how to use the software, but I knew what I needed it to do, so I could Google it. Like, oh, how do you do this in Logic? How do you do this
Yeah.
in? And it was a bit of that for about 2 weeks, I'd say, before I was kind of up and running, being able to record songs.
And thank God for YouTube. I
Oh
think
yeah.
about how many countless hours I've saved learning just about everything I can think of off of YouTube. I mean, that's why it's an amazing world we live in. We have so many problems in the world. Yes, we do. But it's like, yeah, but hey, kids, I can remember back in the day, we actually had to go to this place called the library and you had to use the Dewey Decimal System and get, it's like if
You'd
you
have
want to
to get
learn
the
how to do
book.
something. That's right. And there's a person called a librarian. Anyway, so yeah, it's amazing the world we live in. So, okay. So now let's go back here. So you've got a song, it's mixed, it's mastered, it's ready to go. What next? For as far as like in terms of the Spotify and Apple Music process.
I'm trying to remember what I did with it. So I just released the song. I picked a day and I just put it out in the world. And I think, trying to remember back, I want to say the first week I maybe got 30 plays. Probably, yeah, 30 plays, 40 plays. And that was just, send it out. You post it on your Facebook page, Instagram, whatever, Twitter, what was popular back then, whatever it was. And it just
Right.
got like friends and family check it out. And I think from there, I started doing all of it. I feel like kind of influences itself. So from there, I started just trying to see where songs similar to mine were getting featured. And so I was finding a lot of YouTube playlists of other musicians, like that feature indie music or similar music. And so I would email those playlisters on YouTube and say, "Hey, I made this song. Let me know what you think. See what happens." Uh, got onto a couple of those playlists that started leading to obviously some YouTube people listening, but also those people are adding it on Spotify. And
Okay.
then
Now, real quick, how do you find the email addresses of people that have YouTube channels?
most of the time, if they want to be contacted, there's like an about section on people's YouTube channels. Then they'll just have their business email in there. And I think if you're running one of those indie music channels, you're expecting people to reach out. So there's an expectation of people submitting.
Okay, cool. And I don't think people realize how much people still listen to music on YouTube.
I think it's number
Uh,
one. I think YouTube is like the number one music streaming platform.
Yeah. So if you those of you who haven't really thought about it like all the time, like I remember when our band was learning a lot of covers, you'd always go to YouTube because you knew that everybody in the band could go at least go to YouTube because not everybody had a Spotify, and it's like you have the song that comes up and it just has like the album cover or something on it. And you look at the number of plays that some of those have. I mean, it's in the multiples of millions. It's because
Mm-hmm.
people they put them on playlists or they're part of playlists. And some people just listen to YouTube in the same way that they listen, used to listen to the radio, just sort of in the background. And it's the same way they do with Spotify and Apple playlists. And but it's actually the most commonly used because I guess it's the freest,
Yeah,
and
exactly. It's easier for kids to be able to listen to it. It's easier for places that don't even have Spotify yet. There's a lot of
Yeah.
countries that don't have access to it. So yeah, I think having your music as many places as possible is great because you don't know what somebody else's listening preference is. Don't limit somebody just because of it.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. We actually, because we have a 8 piece funk band with a horn section, and our music tends to sound a little bit more like 70s music. So we have a lot of audience around the country that are older people that just like that style of music. They
Mm-hmm.
never stopped liking it even when it kind of went out of vogue in the 70s or the 80s. And I know that my audience is not big on Spotify. A lot of
Right.
them are just like, oh, we don't do that whole streaming thing, but I know that they're on YouTube, because if they're on
Yeah.
Facebook, they can definitely go to a YouTube link. And believe it or not, we still have a crazy number of people that buy CDs from us.
Oh, I bet.
I know that doesn't apply to everybody out there, although I know that there are some artists that are doing actually the technique that we use. We do a free plus shipping offer, is what we call it. We advertise on with Facebook ads that, hey, you can get this CD for quote unquote free, just pay the shipping and handling charge on it.
Oh, cool.
And we've been doing that for over a year now, and sold over 5,000 CDs that way.
Holy
And
cow.
yeah, and but the great thing about the Facebook ad algorithm, and I didn't really mean to go in this direction, but I think it's a salient point. Uh, I just always tell people, it's like, look, if you want to get into going direct to fans, and one way that I know, the technique that I know that works, is just the Facebook algorithm. Because I'm in advertising and marketing. It sounds like you have been too. As a Facebook, the advertising platform for Facebook is the most advanced that I've ever seen in my career, and I've been in marketing over 15 years. I'm just, because every little thing that you do on Facebook or Instagram, or actually anything outside, because if like, how many of us, log out of the app on our phones and our desktop? Like,
Yeah.
none of us, right? And so it's basically that it's tracking you as you go throughout the internet, so it knows like over 1,000 different data points about your preferences, your personality, your everything that you're into. And it's been amazing to watch. It's like I go out and I just say, hey, Facebook, go out and find me people that will buy my CD, and it does.
Yeah.
I just let it. I've literally have let this ad run now untouched. I had to stop it during the election because the advertising just went nuts. But then after the election was over, everything calmed down, and I ran the ad with a one video, untouched, same budget. I haven't changed a word or anything since then. And every day we sell CDs, and it's just. But I know I don't have to. And if you've done any advertising, or if you haven't, one of the things that you can do is you can go in and say, oh, I want to go after artists, that sound like this, sound like that. But as the algorithm gets smarter, I don't even have to do that anymore. I could just say, hey, go out and find somebody with a pulse in the United States that would like my music, and it figures out who it is and puts the music in front of
Which
us,
is
and
insane.
we sell
It's
CDs. Yeah. And we built up this massive email list and all this stuff. And actually, we just released, in keeping with that, um, I've got it right here. This is a print on demand CD that we did. So this is made
oh,
by a
cool.
service called kunaki.com.
Oh,
Um,
I've used them before in a pinch, like before shows and stuff. Before a show
Yeah,
on
yeah.
tour or something,
I
you need
don't
them
love
quick.
their interface. Their customer service is sort of, but basically, so we don't have to stock anything. Now, this is not how we do the CDs that we sell on Facebook, but we released a live album and just put a couple new singles on this.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to put a lot of time or energy or money into it. So I'm just like, I set it up, and so we sent it to that email list. And I had a package deal with this and a DVD of a live. Actually, it was a big live stream concert we did for a package for $25, and I just keep selling them every day because we've built up that mailing list from the Facebook thing. So that's my spiel on what works for us. But everybody's different, like you said.
Yeah, everybody's listening habits. I think I think that's a very important point, is kind of figuring out who your audience is and figuring out how your release strategy kind of lines up with that. Like, whereas I know that the type of music that I make, the people that are listening to it are on Spotify, so it makes sense to prioritize building an audience on there. Whereas if you know your audience isn't on Spotify and they're still using CDs, go to where go to them with what it is that they need to listen to you.
Yeah, I mean, it would just for me, it would just be an exercise in frustration if I just spent all my time on Spotify. And I am actually trying to do one thing that we're going to start testing, hopefully as soon as next week, is I like to think we're a pretty great live band. I mean, we've been together for 8 years, playing every weekend, Friday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday for 8 years. We're tight, and we're known as a great live band. And so I'm like, how I'm looking for every opportunity to exploit that,
Yeah,
and so I'm like, we just bought a new mixer, so I had to retire the old one. So we're going to try doing live streams and posting them on Twitch and actually on Reddit.
cool.
So Reddit has streaming now. That's actually one of the things that drew me to Reddit in the first place. I was like, so you can maybe stream music on Reddit. That might be
Yeah,
interesting. Because I see some guy playing guitar. He's like some metal guitar player guy. And every time I see him do a video, there's 5,000 people watching. I'm like, hey, we got 8 people in our band. How many
yeah.
people would watch if if it actually sounded good and looked halfway decent? Maybe that we get a lot of. But I'm going to try to take our live performance and drive traffic over to Spotify. And we rehearse once a week anyway. So I'm figuring, let's give it a shot.
If you're
You
already
know?
doing it, yeah, turn it all into content.
Yeah, no question. Okay. So I digress quite a bit on the Spotify thing, but okay. So, I meant to ask you about your distributor. So are you using like TuneCore or?
I'm split between DistroKid and AWOL are the two distributors that I'm using, and it just kind of depended on the release type. Those are the ones that I use personally if I'm not like working with the label or their distributor or something.
Okay. So you open up so many nice little avenues we can go down. So AWOL, I know
Mm-hmm.
that people are like, ooh, I've heard of AWOL. Now they're a little different as a distributor. You have to be kind of, did they approach you? Did you approach them? How'd that work out?
I guess you have to apply to get onto AWOL, and I'm not really sure what the criteria is. I'm not sure what they look at or see for consistency, but I sent them a message and was able to get an account. I think it's pretty open. If you're an active musician, I think getting an AWOL plan is not too tough. I tried them out for a little bit. I'd been on DistroKid for a good length of time. I think DistroKid's great, TuneCore is great, CD Baby's great. Uh, just pick one and I started getting stuff up online, and then the AWOL thing came up because I had heard from a friend who was with them that they were getting more Spotify editorial consideration when they were using AWOL. But I don't know that my on the topic of Spotify, I don't know if my editorial playlisting has gone up or down one way or the other. Uh, I I think it's really just the good music wins out in the end for that sort of thing. I don't think going with AWOL or any distributor on the promise of better playlisting is really a thing at the moment.
Okay. Because at what point during your career did you go to AWOL? Was that been a semi recent move? I'm just kind of curious if you had like a lot of streams already
Mm-hmm.
and you came to them, because like I said, there is sort of an application process, and they looked at you and probably looked at your numbers and went, okay, we could definitely work with this guy because
Yeah, try it.
we're not multiplying zero, we're multiplying a well established act. Do you feel like that was maybe what happened?
Yeah, maybe. If I have to remember, I probably signed up with them in 20 like late 2018. So it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I joined onto AWOL. Uh, but yeah, like I said, I still split releases between the
Okay.
two. If I have something that has more lead time, or I think I'm co-releasing with somebody else, some of the tools that AWOL has as a distributor are pretty cool. Being able to do sales tracking and splitting revenues, inviting people to your team, I guess more advanced features are cool, but I don't know if all of that is necessarily worth the higher cost of royalties that you have to pay to them compared to someone like DistroKid or TuneCore.
Okay. Because with DistroKid, they don't take any royalties, right? It's just a yearly
It's just
fee.
an upfront fee. It's a couple bucks. I couldn't even tell you what it is. I
I think
think,
it's like $19 a year. It's like just a flat fee, unlimited songs, and that's why they've built up this massive. I mean, you can't. How could you possibly beat that deal? Now it's pretty
yeah,
bare bones, I guess in some manner you're kind of getting what you pay for, but it's kind of like a starting place for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm a big. I guess coming from the tech world, I'm a big fan of what I call move fast and break things, and I think I, I feel like talking to friends, and I think we all know friends who are artists or musicians. I think there's a big hesitation to just finish and put stuff out. People get
Mm,
scared, they get cold feet, and I think they kind of wrap that up into like, well, I don't know what distributor to use, and I don't know if I should sign up for this thing or that, which one's better, or who's going to charge me more. Like, just pick one and start, and then give it
yeah.
6 months when you better understand what it is you need and don't need, and then you can adapt from there. Um,
Yeah. 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 Good enough is good enough. It's more important
right,
to get it done than to get it perfect. All those kinds
exactly.
of things. Yeah. I 110% believe that it's easy to fall into that trap to not do that. But, okay. So now you mentioned release, I guess schedule or something to that effect. You've heard, do you record a song and then you basically upload it, or you have a single release date, or how do you do all that?
Yeah, I early on I was finishing because I had set this like song a month challenge for myself, which I guess I'm still doing by accident. Just stopped paying attention to it. But at the time, I was finishing a song. I had this one done. I put it out in June, whatever the month was. I lost my job, and then I go, oh no, I don't have anything else. And so I would write, I would have to spend that whole month writing and recording a song that I was going to put out. And in those cases, I was often finishing the song like 2 days before the end of the month. And so that was like finish and then hit upload. But I feel like as I started getting better and more confident in recording, I started having more ideas done, or I would have more songs done. And over time, I've started to like build a runway, I guess you could say, that allowed me to kind of schedule releases out and say, all right, this one's done. It's going to come out in 2 months, and then set a release date.
Okay, okay, because according to what I've heard is that and I think maybe even Spotify may even say this in their interface in the background, that it's to be considered for editorial playlists, you do need to, there needs to be that ramp up period. You're basically giving them time to listen to your song,
Yeah,
right?
I think it's about 2 weeks is what they recommend for playlist or for editorial consideration. I think it's a week. You have to upload at least a week in advance to get on to be considered for release radar, which is a playlist for people that have listened to you recently.